Home Defense show a couple of days ago, and I tell you, I think she scorched the microphone. So you guys should check out that interview, homedefenseshow.com. It was pretty good. All right, now we have got another state representative, Mike Hoadley from the 99th District. Mike was born in Flint, Michigan. He graduated from, how do you pronounce, Au Gres. I'm an English major, but I'm part French, so it's okay. The Au Gres High School, then served in the U.S. Army. The Army says hooah, the Marine Corps says oorah, but we're on the same team. He attended Delta College. Representative Hoadley owned Hunter's Niche Incorporated and was a customer relations manager for Dartmouth Archery. He's a former mayor of Au Gres. Mike has been married to his wife Mary for 26 years, and they have 2 children. All right, it's a pleasure to have Representative Hoadley come on up right now and give us a piece of his mind.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks for braving the weather. I don't know how to follow Representative, but I'll give it a whirl. I will follow with, I'm equally as pissed off about what's going on in the infringement of your rights. So I'm going to start this statement off, and I'm going to turn, and I want you, on the count of 3, shall not infringe. 1, 2, 3. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment is a vital part of our constitutional system that protects our individual liberty, our national security, and our public safety. The Second Amendment protects our individual liberty by allowing us to defend ourselves, our property from tyranny, oppression, and crime. History shows that disarming the people leads to dictatorship, genocide, and civil war. The Second Amendment is a vital part of our constitutional system that protects our individual liberty, our national security, and our public safety. Amen. Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, and Communist China all banned or restricted private gun ownership before committing atrocities against their own people. Right. The Founding Fathers envisioned a militia as a citizen army that could defend the nation from foreign invasion, domestic insurrection, or federal tyranny. During the Revolutionary War, the militia fought alongside the Continental Army against British forces. Amen. Studies show that gun ownership reduces crime rates by creating a deterring effect, increasing self-defense capabilities, and reduced reliance on response times from first responders. 100%. During the Revolutionary War, according to the FBI, states with more gun owners like yourselves and myself have lower violent crime rates than in states with fewer gun owners. That is why I am proud to stand firm in our founding principles, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. During this legislative session, I have introduced Second Amendment affirming legislation that would eliminate the listed gun-free zones, also known as victim-only zones, for concealed pistol license holders. I've also joined my colleagues standing up here today in a bill package that would eliminate the permitting process to concealed carry in the state of Michigan. That's better known as constitutional carry. As well as working on legislation that would make it crystal clear that our part of shall not infringe, do they not understand? So on the count of 3, we're gonna shout it out again to those in here. On the count of 3, you remember those 3 words? 1, 2, 3. Shall not infringe. Thank you all for coming out today. Appropriately enough, keep your powder dry. God bless you all. God bless our state of Michigan. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you for coming out today.
All right, folks, one of the things you should be figuring out here is that you are not alone. I know in the last, 3 years, we've had our butts kicked all over the state of Michigan. But I'm here to tell you, just because we got our butts kicked one day doesn't mean we're going to roll over. Okay? Some of you used to be in the military. I was in the Marine Corps. What does it mean? When you get your butt kicked, what do? You get up and you fight again. You just keep right on fighting. And we're going to be here next year too, and the year after that, and the year after that. All right? But you need to understand that these people that are up there talking, they're getting their butts kicked too, but they're going on offense. All right? We have to help them go on offense. All right? And that's what we're here to do today. So now, Angela Regas, Representative Regas, is going to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Skip. So we have Senator Jonathan Lindsay here with us today. It's a special treat. He was actually just walking, he has a committee meeting, and he can't turn down an opportunity to speak on the Second Amendment. So please welcome Senator Jonathan Lindsay.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you all for being here. This is pretty unexpected. I just came over to say hi and didn't expect to be addressing the crowd, but I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. There are a lot of people in society that are just, the culture has taught people to be scared of guns. I see people walking around exercising their Second Amendment right. It makes me smile. It makes me very happy. I was in the military for a while. I was a Green Beret for about 7 years. My fun thing is watching people and trying to identify what are you carrying out here. But it's just great to see people showing up, especially in this weather, standing for what you believe in. I think when I walked up, I was hearing Representative Hoadley talk about, talking about shall not infringe. The Second Amendment votes that we take up here are the single easiest issue for me to vote on, because I told people from the day I started running exactly that phrase. We don't need to put a long statement on my website about what I believe. The Second Amendment's crystal clear, and I made a promise to people that any of these issues that come up, I'm going to vote for the Second Amendment, and that's what I do, and I intend to keep doing. But my message to all of you is stay engaged, stay active, don't lose heart. And frankly, I mean, to a crowd like this, I think another message that just goes beyond politics is appropriate. And that message is, stay prepared to be involved in a lot more than politics, because frankly, this is probably something that elected officials aren't supposed to say, but we're not headed down a path where government's going to mean much in the coming years at this rate. What I mean by that is people come and ask me, well, what about the next election cycle? What about the next election cycle? And I'm dead serious when I tell them I'll be happy in 4 years if we're still having elections. I'll be happy if our self-governing republic manages to persist through these times that we see. So I know that a lot of people in this crowd understand that, and you also understand that something like standing up for the rights you have, the firearm rights you have, has more to do with taking ownership of your own world, standing up and being ready to be self-sufficient no matter what. So thank you all again for giving me an opportunity to address the crowd. Stay strong. God bless America.
All right. Great to have the senator up here. Tom Lambert, you want to get yourself ready? I know you're down there somewhere. All right, time for a story though. Okay. All right, the reps and senators, they have to leave right now. They've got to go in and fight for us in a different kind of way. So give them a big hand right now. They're on their way to fight for you. Oh, prayer, yes. Prayer warriors. Thank you, guys. And gal. All right, flash from the past. Way back in 2009, when I founded the Second Amendment March, it was kind of a funny time. I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, and that was my job. I was, like homeschooling my kids and, taking care of the house, doing dishes, cooking, things like that. But I was also writing, because I'm a prolific writer, and I wrote this article for one of the gun groups, and I said, you know what? And the context was Barack Obama had just been elected president, and he had been inaugurated, and everyone was scared to death that he was going to come in and abolish the Second Amendment. And so I made a bold statement. I said, you know what? I will organize a national march on Washington, D.C., a pro-gun Second Amendment march, if someone will build me a website. Because I didn't know how to do it. And I had over 100 people in the next week offer to build me a website. And so I kind of had to go through with it. And that's what I did. And we spent the next 16 months or so, myself and Brian Jepson, Nathan Nephew, and Terry Stock, we built the Second Amendment March from nothing. We had our day at the Washington, D.C., at the Washington Monument. All kinds of things happened there. And we coalesced a group of people that are still close friends today. And like Angela Riga said, this is a tradition, coming here and meeting. It's like a pep rally. Remember when you were in high school and you had that pep rally, every Friday before the football game or the basketball game, and everybody rah, 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 cheer, cheer, cheer. But then after that, you had to go out and you had to fight on the gridiron. You had to fight for what you wanted to attain. And that's the way it is here now. Thank you very much for being here in the rain. Our next speaker, Tom Lambert. He's the past president of Michigan Open Carry. He's past president, current board member, and legislative director for Michigan Open Carry. He's a graduate of Western Michigan University Cooley Law School. He practices law related to firearm right and governmental transparency, Freedom of Information and Open Meetings Act, as well as other areas of law. Tom is married, he has 3 children, and lives in the greater Grand Rapids area. And no, I won't tell any lawyer jokes now that you're an attorney. Tom, thank you very much for fighting so much and speaking today.
Thank you very much, Skip. Again, my name is Tom Lambert, and it's my honor, once again, I wonder how many years I've been doing this, but it's my honor once again to say, who's open carrying today? Skip's right, but it's a tradition. You just got to be here. I remember years ago when, maybe Skip, was it one of the first ones you guys had here that was in the winter? It was really cold. It was like 10, maybe 15 degrees. And I remember I was standing right over there in the grass with just a sweatshirt on, shivering, listening to all these speakers. I was just somebody that supported the Second Amendment, supported my rights, just getting into the movement, thought, hey, they're going to gather in Lansing. Maybe I should go. I stood over there, and I froze, and I loved every minute of it. Well, be careful what you do, because some catalysts lead to a lot. I've since spent many years at the head of a gun rights organization. I've been a legislative director now for over a decade. I decided, all this activism, that's not enough. I should take 5 years of my life, set that aside, go to law school so I can practice law in the gun rights community too. And now I'm doing that as well. But you have to keep fighting each and every single time, no matter where it is or what you're doing, just like Skip said. We've heard that there have been some bills or legislation passed in this state already this year that is not friendly to gun rights. They held a lot of hearings in both the House and the Senate on those bills. I attended Every single one of those hearings. I sat through hours and hours and hours of nonsense, just hoping for the opportunity to say something in return. A couple times I got that opportunity. Most of the time I did not. Most hearings were over 3 hours of just pure nonsense, but I sat there and I dealt with it because that was my job to do that. That was my role, my thing that I do in the gun community to keep fighting for this gun community, just so in the rare opportunity when I could have just a couple minutes to speak, somebody would be there to speak for us. But what you do is up to you. Whatever you do, don't feel that you need to do what I do. Don't feel that you need to do what the person next to you does. Everybody offers unique skills and experiences that you can bring to the community. And I know there's a lot of people in the community that do wonderful things like setting up this event that are absolutely not in my area of expertise. So find something that you can do and work on that. But I want to tell you about some more gun bills that are going through the legislature right now. I just spent the past 3 weeks here in Lansing, driving here multiple times a week to sit in more and more hearings. They are working on bills that they claim deal with domestic violence. Now, the issue of the domestic violence is, okay, generally not disputed. We agree in the gun community, those who do violent acts, okay, there are consequences when you do a violent act. The problem is the bills that they're working on, well, what do we say? And I said this, I sat right in the committee and I told this to the chair. We in the gun community know anti-gunners for two things. One, they don't care about stopping violence. That's not what they care about. They care about infringing upon your rights and taking your guns away. And two, they don't know how our laws work because they don't care about how our laws work because it's not about stopping violence to them. And those two things have been absolutely front and center the past couple weeks. These bills that are supposedly geared towards stopping domestic violence have nothing to do about violence. What they would do is they say, well, if you committed these misdemeanors, then you can't have a gun for approximately 8 to 15 years. And it has been fun, let's call it, to sit in committee and read some of these offenses off to them. Things like making an unsolicited commercial call after 9 p.m. would cause you to lose your gun rights. Calling somebody and hanging up more than twice in such a manner that annoys them would cause you to lose your gun rights. This was one I really enjoyed. Entering the ice shanty of another, regardless of whether they're in the ice shanty without their permission, would cause you to lose your gun rights for 8 to 15 years. I pointed all these things out to them. I've even then given them the language and said, look, if this is what you want to do, and you keep talking about federal law, then here, take this one sentence. This one sentence is all you need. Apply this one sentence to the law. You can have everything you want and none of the harm. How did they vote? They all voted no. Because it's not about stopping violence, and they don't care. And it couldn't be more evident right now with these bills that should be easy for them, but the only reason they're having a hard time with them is because somebody like myself and a few other people are willing to stand up and actually fight them in committee and point out the fact that they have no idea what they're talking about. And I want to go a little bit further on that. I've touched on some of that legislation before. Skip had a wonderful story about, some bills got passed here. They're not friendly to you. And so what are you going to do about it? Do we just say, oh man, I didn't like that, that's too bad, we're going to have to deal with that now? No. It's an opportunity. Rather than being upset, rather than getting down on yourself, you should be excited. And yes, I said that right. You should be excited that they did something to challenge you. Because when they challenge you, that is your time to step up and your time to show what you're made of. And without going into some of that litigation that I promise you will come to challenge them, without getting into that too deeply, I want to just describe to you something that motivates me, and I think it will motivate you. One of the bills that they passed earlier this year, they called it background checks. Even though it didn't really have anything to do with background checks, it was about licensing. They want you to go and get a license every time you purchase a gun. They want you to apply for, pay for, wait for a license each and every time you have to get a firearm. That's exactly right. We have this decision from the United States Supreme Court called Bruin. And under Bruin, the standard is a history and tradition. If there's no history and tradition of something, it's a bad gun regulation. Well, I'm here to tell you there's no history and tradition of a law existing in this nation where you have to do such a thing each and every single time. And as you probably know, they didn't just come up with this law out of thin air. They took a law that has traditionally and today applies to pistols, made it worse, and then applied it to all firearms. So now what happens if a court comes along when this law is challenged and says, nope, your changes are unconstitutional under Bruin because there's no history and tradition? I'll explain to you how it works. The court can't say, well, you have to go back to the way it was. The court doesn't have the power to do that. The court can say that the law, as it was amended, is either good or it's bad. And so what is the result of that? If there's no history and tradition of this kind of law, where you have to get a license for each and every one of your guns every time you buy it, then the entire law, everything that existed and everything that they added, would be struck down as unconstitutional, leaving you with more than you have today. That is why I am thanking them for this opportunity to fight, to stand up, and to show what we're made of, because opportunities like this don't come along often, and if you're willing to fight properly, you can take something where you lose ground and turn it into something where you gain ground. And if you're with me, we will keep fighting for this at every opportunity that we can. Make sure you are supporting your state gun groups, make sure you are supporting your local gun groups, and make sure you're supporting your national gun groups. The last thing I want to tell you is our state gun groups, as well as working with national gun groups, are working better today than they have in a very long time. It's unfortunate that it took us this long to get that to work, but it is working. Support everybody. Everybody has their own choices. That's fine. Support them as much as you can in any way that you can. And thank you, everyone, for showing that you're true supporters of the Second Amendment and being here today.
All right, Tom, thank you very, very, very much. You know, before I forget, I want to thank Michigan Open Carry. They have been here for us, for all of us, for a very long time. So I want to give a special thanks to Michigan Open Carry. Give them a round of applause real quick. All right, awesome. Now, one of the things that old people have, and I am old. Well, I'm older than a lot of people. I'm 66 years old, right? Just had a birthday. But one of the things that old people have that young people don't have is a lot of war stories. Why? Well, because they just haven't fought the war yet. All right? But I'll give you another Second Amendment March war story. We're in Washington, D.C. We're at the Second Amendment March. There's over 3,000 people there. There was I did maybe 20, 30 interviews, radio, television, you name it. Al Jazeera, who was that little short girl, CNN, Soledad O'Brien, Hardball with Chris Matthews, and they all had their own subtle way of twisting everything that you said, right? But we're there in the shadow of the Washington Monument. George Washington, one of the greatest freedom fighters of American history. And we're there on a huge stage after 15 months of planning. And then I look over across the road into a big high-rise building, and we see snipers with high-powered rifles, high-powered scopes pointing at us. And I thought, oh, now that's odd. I thought guns were illegal in Washington, D.C. But it was the government protecting us, I guess. That was so kind of them to do that. But I get nervous when people with high-powered rifles point guns at me through high-powered scopes. But I noticed last year we had the same thing here. Some of you probably didn't notice it, but there were. I assume they were with the government. I hope they were with the government. But please stop pointing guns at us. It makes people nervous and it's rude, okay? Keep it in the holster. All right, Jim Mikowski, are you ready to come up here? He is. Jim has been fighting for the Second Amendment for a very, very long time. I'm not saying he's old. I'm saying he's seasoned, and he's hardcore. Jim is an attorney for Michigan gun owners, and he's an attorney in his office in Dearborn. He's a graduate of the university and graduated law school from the University of Detroit Mercy Law. He is an avid gun rights supporter and teaches a law portion for CPL classes. Jim is frequently a guest on various media outlets regarding legal issues relating to firearms. A highlight of Jim's career is arguing and winning a reversal in the Michigan Supreme Court. Jim serves as Corporation Counsel for Michigan Gun Owners Incorporated, as well as a legal advisor to Michigan Open Carry. Jim has represented many people in firearms-related cases and is currently involved with an appeal against the Ann Arbor School District that is old. Strike that. Are you currently suing the University of Michigan? No, he's not. He's done suing them. All right, I'm going to let Jim bring you up to speed and tell you what is on his mind. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks everyone for coming out today. You know, I was really discouraged when I woke up this morning. I looked at the weather, terrible weather, and then I thought about how last year when we had beautiful weather, no one showed. I think today we have more people here than came last year with this terrible weather, and you all deserve a big round of applause for coming out here today and supporting the Second Amendment. Normally I have a prepared speech. I don't have that today. I just want to ask any of you, 5 years ago, would you have ever imagined the state we are in Michigan right now? Would you ever have imagined what laws have been passed? Could you even believe where we're at? You wouldn't have been able to believe it. I'm stunned. And the only thing that I can blame is complacency. Not you people. People in this state were lazy. They didn't vote. They didn't advocate for the Second Amendment. They thought their rights were fine. Hey, nothing to worry about here. Michigan's great. But look what happened when everyone got complacent. We have lost so much in this state, and now we're going to have to try to claw it back. We can't trust this current legislature to do anything. Unfortunately, I don't feel we can trust the Michigan courts to do something. So we're going to have to do it other ways. We've got a lot of litigation planned in federal court. That's all I'm going to say about that. We're fighting for you. I just ask that you help us, okay? You know, the attorneys, we are doing our best. We need support from you, okay? We have to pay our own selves. We have to pay feed our families. We do everything at deep discounts, but if you can donate any money at all to the gun rights organizations in the state or the federal gun rights organizations,
they've got the fight too. Whatever you can do to help is appreciated. We will do whatever we can to fight for your rights because no one else is doing it, unfortunately. You know, thank you. Again, I wish I had written something in advance that would be more polished, but this is coming from the heart, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. All right, our next speaker, I'm not sure he's here yet, is Darleaf down in the crowd. Sheriff Darleaf. Maybe he got pulled over by the state police, who knows? Well, if he gets here, we'll have Dar come up. Right now, my phone is ringing. Hi, Brian, you're calling me. Hi, Brian. Keep talking. Okay. I've been told to keep talking. All right, well, let's give you another war story then, right? How many of you were ever in the United States military? Raise your hand real quick. All right. Army, I bet, right? No? Yell it out loud. What rank? Air National Guard. Awesome. All of you, thank you very much for your service. Listen, I was in the Marine Corps, 6 years in peacetime. Peacetime Marine, Cold War. This is like a war, folks. It's just a different kind of war. It's just different. But the people that win wars, they're not always the smartest, they're not always the most well-equipped, they're not always the most powerful. You know, ask King George, all right? He'll tell you. That's not the way it works. The people that win are the people that never, ever, ever give up. You can't defeat someone without giving up, unless you kill them. That's the only way to do it. And our representatives, all these nasty, foul Democrats, I don't like them. They rule at the consent of you and I. And I do not consent. I will not consent. I will never, ever, ever consent to having my guns taken away. It's just not going to happen. That's not the way Marines do it. And all of you here, man, we have had snowstorms. You know, we've had 5 degrees. We've had thunderstorms. It's raining right now. But you're still here. Why is that? Because you're kind of like Marines. You don't give up. We need you to never, ever, ever give up. All right? We'll mutate, we'll change, we'll adapt, we'll improvise, we'll do whatever we got to do, but we're not going to give up. That's the way it's going to be. All right, we're going to have Ron Tiller come up here. He is a good friend of mine. We're from the same hometown. It's a little teeny tiny town called Orangeville. Yeah, Orangeville. And if you don't know where that is, you're probably not a drug user, but that's okay. All right? Ron, come up here and tell us what's on your mind.
That's not why I walked up there to look at. I wanted to just quickly. Closer, okay. I wanted to just quickly mention that the Second Amendment, when it says the first 4 words, regulated did not mean a bunch of rules you had to follow and uniforms you had to wear back in the 1790s. Regulated meant armed, prepared. Militia was defined in the law as every able-bodied male 17 to 45. So if you put the meaning of those words in that first line, it says a well-armed bunch of guys. Think about that. And what I haven't heard anybody talk about is the Michigan Constitution, which came 100 years later thereabouts. It was very clear and easy to understand, and nobody can argue with what it says. It says every person, I think everybody here is a person, has the right to keep and bear arms.
Terry Johnson, get ready, buddy. Terry's gonna rock this crowd. While we're waiting for Terry to come up here, another war story. See, I have been fighting this fight, decades upon decades, right? And I remember, 25 years ago, I was the state director for Ted Nugent United Sportsmen of America here in Michigan. Does anyone know who Ted Nugent is? Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's kind of rowdy. He's a bit of a bad boy. He's a second member bad boy. But, I was representing Ted Nugent, and that was before Michigan had its CPL law. We had to fight for like 15 years just to get that passed, and it's like all of the planets and the stars had to line up just perfect, along with fighting like crazy to get that law passed. And I remember we had to do a lot of stuff in the trenches, and I look back on some of the things that I did during that time, and they weren't felonies or anything like that, but it's like, wow, I can't believe I did that. But I'm glad that I did that. One of the things, you remember the old county gun boards? Yeah, well, those were nasty, weren't they? I remember, basically, it went like this. You would get a meeting, and then you'd go in there, in a private room. No one else could see what was going on back there, right? And then you'd have the state police, the county sheriff, and the county prosecutor, and they would ask you, well, why do you think you need to carry a gun? And then you tell them, and then they would say, no. And that's pretty much the way that it worked. And one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to shine the light of day on all these cockroaches that were in there, right? Because sometimes a lot of politicians, whether local or state or whatever, they're just cockroaches. But we've got some good legislators here. We need more, but we've got some good ones here. I remember we went into the Berry County Gun Board, and we crashed it. They weren't supposed to let us in there. They thought they had the right to keep us out. And they held the meeting in a secured lockdown state police post in Hastings, Michigan. And this was back, I think, in like 1998 or so. And I said, I'm going to crash this meeting. I'm going to videotape it and find out what goes on inside these meetings. And so I didn't have a camera, so I borrowed one from a friend, and it was like this big. It was this honking big. It was like a man pod, a shoulder-mounted rocket system, right? And so I got that, figured out how to use it, and then what they would do is the state police post commander would make the applicants wait out in the parking lot. And then when it was their turn to come in, he would walk out, he'd get them out of their car, and then he would escort them into this secured lockdown area. Well, I'm a Marine, I worked for Ted Nugent, I didn't know any better, right? So I waited out there in the parking lot, and I saw the lieutenant come out and get the next applicant. And then he turned around and he walked back into the secured locked door, right? So I went up there, I followed them in, and then just before the door closed, I grabbed it and I walked in, and I followed them right in, and you know, I've got this big shoulder-mounted camera up on my right shoulder here, and I'm filming away. And then, you know, we walk back into a conference room, and I'm passing state troopers, and they're looking at me like, what the heck's going on here? But I was with their boss, so nobody stopped me. So we walked back into the room, and then it was really funny because I walked into the room behind the lieutenant who didn't even know I was there. And he sat down and he looked up. You know what deer in the headlights look like? That's exactly what it looked like. And the county prosecutor, the county sheriff, they all looked like, who is he? Why is he here? They thought I was with TV8 because of the camera. And so I sat there. They ignored me for an hour. They didn't even look at me. And they went through their whole meeting, and then we were done, and then I walked out. And then I got out to the truck, and I tried to play back the video. It wasn't turned on. But that was the first time. That was like, you know, Second Amendment activism when it was still pretty dangerous, all right? But hey, we got the law passed, the bill was passed, went into law, and we have it now. But the people inside this building, about 51% of them, are trying to restrict it. And if they could, they'd get rid of it. Sorry, I didn't mean to preach. All right, our next speaker. Terry Johnson. He's a criminal defense attorney in the Detroit area whose specialty is firearms law. He's an NRA certified firearms instructor and has been featured in the media as a subject matter expert in this area of law. He's a graduate of Michigan State University and Western Michigan University Thomas M. Cooley Law School. He is an instructor with local police reserve academies in Media, Detroit area, and the vice president of Farmington Public Schools Board of Education. Terry Johnson, thank you very much.
Hey, let's give Skip a hand before. Come on, Skip did a great job. You can do better than that. Give it up for Skip. All right. Listen, I'm not going to be long. I'm disappointed. And I'm going to tell you why I'm disappointed. I have been here for the last 8-10 years, and something happened today that truly told me we are losing this war. How many of you have tried to go into the Capitol today? How many of you were turned away because you had a gun? Yep. They just changed that.
2 months ago.
They just took something else away from us. When are we going to stop this? How many of us want to stop it?
Yeah!
We have to stop it. We have to stand up for our rights. We must go to the polls and vote. I don't care how you feel about abortion. I don't care how you feel about immigration. I do care how you feel about my right to protect myself. How many are with me? If we have to be single voter people. We have to vote for those who support us. There's no way in the world they could have passed what they did here without some people that we voted for. Call them out. Here's the funny part about this. I also found out going in there, if you're an off-duty officer, too bad. If you are exempt, if you have a CPL and you're exempt, too bad. But if you're a legislator, come on in. They are making laws so they can protect themselves, but they're forgetting about the people that put them in this job. Right. It's time to fix this. Yes. And that time is now. Yes. We need to stand up next year. Yep. Everybody make one commitment to bring 2 other people with you.
I bring 5. Yeah.
at least 2 other people with you and tell them to bring 2 people with them. We need to flood all of this space with people, and we need to show everybody that we will not go away. I know it's raining. I'm not going to be up here much longer. All I've got to say is we must stand up, and the fight hasn't started today. It's not ended today. It's just starting. Let's get our rights back. Thank you.
All right. I like that guy. All right. Folks, one of the things that we need, I'm going to put a plug in for Second Amendment March. I know, yeah, it's my organization, but it's not really mine, it's yours. Okay? We've been doing this since 2009. Okay? And people always ask, well, why don't we get, big name personalities to come in here and talk to us? Well, because it takes money. All right? So if you could drop $5 or $10 in our jar over there just to help keep us going, we would really appreciate that. Because we want to do this every single year, but we need help. Okay? So help us if you can. You can also donate at secondamendmentmarch.com, 2amarch.com. That would be really, really good. All right. One more war story, and then we'll have our legal panel, okay? All right. War story. During that first year of the Second Amendment March, 2009/2010, we didn't just do a rally in Washington, D.C. We had state rallies in 36 states. 36 out of the 50 states. And I traveled all over the country speaking at these events. And they were all different. But I remember down in Ohio back then, they didn't have a CPL law. They were fighting against a CPL law down there. But we did a rally at the state capitol in Ohio, and their attorney general said, you can't do it. It's against the law. You're not allowed on the Capitol grounds with a gun. And so we had to sue them, and about 3 days before that rally, before that march, we got the word that, okay, they ruled in your favor, you can have your march there with your guns. And we did. We had 500 people there at the state capitol, right on the lawn, just like here, right? But there were 100 state police officers surrounding us on horseback with carbines, M4s, and shotguns. And they expected all kinds of bad, terrible things to happen. And the only bad, terrible thing that happened in their eyes was that we mocked them. Okay? I mean, I'm pro-law enforcement, but I'm also pro-Second Amendment, right? And that comes first. One thing that I learned as Second Amendment founder is that the level of freedom that we have across this country, it just varies from state to state to state. If someone from Michigan talks to someone from Washington, D.C. or California or New York City, they'll go, wow, man, you guys have so much freedom. And there's a line from The Patriot. Remember that Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot? The one French guy, he says, your sense of freedom is as pale as your skin. That's true. There are different levels of freedom. And right now, we are steadily losing freedom in the state of Michigan. We've got to get it back. You talk to someone from Utah or Texas or Florida, and they'll go, well, why do you stay there? Why don't you move? Well, because this state belongs to me. It doesn't belong to Gretchen Whitmer. Okay? It belongs to me. I've been here my whole life. I was born and raised here. Okay? You couldn't pry me out of this state with a crowbar. I'm here, I'm going to fight, and we're going to fight until we get our freedom back. That's the way it has to be. All right. Someone tell me how this legal panel is going to work. Well, why don't we take let's take a 10-minute break, and then the legal panel will set up, and then we'll get started with that. Okay? Thank you very much. God bless. All right, folks, he's back. We're going to do our legal panel now. We have Jim Mikowski, Terry Johnson, and Tom Lambert. You already know their specifications because I told you about those earlier. They'll answer any legal questions that you have, and I know you probably have a lot. We'll do it right down there. So just huddle up close to them. And I think we have to do it without a microphone because we can't take this one down there, okay? So Jim or Terry, Tom, someone take control down there.
I'll start first. Let's get everybody in real quick.
All right, come in close, come in close.
Before we start, I want everybody to know one thing. I want a huge round of applause. This is Tom Lambert's first attorney panel. He has really worked hard to get here, and I just want to give him some recognition for that. So, first question has to go to Tom. Who's got it? For Tom. I'm in the process of finding a commercial vehicle. I would like to travel. Can I travel with said car beam in a commercial vehicle?
Traveling with a car beam, a commercial vehicle is a question. The biggest thing you're most likely going to run into is company policy. My company, your company. Now we're going to get into federal law, and whether federal law protects you. Federal law generally protects you from traveling from one state to another where you're involved in possessing both locations. You're not necessarily doing that all the time if you're going to travel out of state. Travel within Michigan or travel from state to state, across the country. Most likely you're going to have more trouble in each state that you have to be aware of. I know Jim is very experienced with handling commercial drivers that come into Michigan and have problems under Michigan law. Perhaps you can explain the typical problems they run into.
I've represented a lot of truck drivers who come to Michigan and we're unaware of Michigan law. Other states, they hand out handheld electroshock devices, the handheld tasers for what and stun guns. And I don't know how many truck drivers come to Michigan with one of those on their dash because that's something a truck driver commonly carries, and they get charged with a 5-year felony. I think the 5-year felony is illegal.
Someone just used one.
It sounded like that. Yeah, I think the 5-year felony is unconstitutional based on the court precedent. Nobody wants to take the risk of being convicted of a felon, and they always plead it out. With regard to carrying a carbine, you're going to have to check the laws in each state. With regard to carrying a long gun,
I have no intentions of keeping it loaded. If I get hung up in one of these blockades and they start blowing my windows out, I want to be able to protect myself.
and I've had clients who've been caught up in those incidents out in Seattle a couple of years ago. But he came to Michigan, thought he was all right with Michigan laws. He thought every state was as free as Texas.
How about the gentleman in the black shirt, then we'll get the gentleman in the blue shirt next.
Given that most truck drivers tend to lean conservative, I would think that they would have a CCW or CPL in their own state, and then therefore it'd be okay to bring their stun gun. You're saying that they don't?
A lot of states don't require a license.
Oh, so they just don't have it. But if they did have a license in their own state and they brought a stun gun in Michigan, they'd be okay.
No, the stun gun, the only. Go ahead, Tom.
So let's say you're licensed in Ohio. Well, when you come to Michigan, even though Michigan will recognize your resident license from Ohio, you still have to follow Michigan law, and Michigan law is still different from Ohio law, different from Indiana law, different from New York law. And that's the problem you run into, is when you're in the state, you still have to follow the laws of that state. And you can't just say, well, I'm from Michigan, I'm only subject to Michigan law. It doesn't work that way.
So there is no stun gun reciprocity. You can only have a stun gun in Michigan if you're a Michigan resident with the Michigan CPL.
Under current Michigan law, stun guns are per se illegal to have. Tasers that shoot the prongs, you can only have a taser if you also have a CPL. But stun guns, think the cattle prod, are still 100% illegal to possess, and I totally agree with Jim that it is clearly unconstitutional. In fact, the law was declared unconstitutional for stun guns in a case called Yana, and then the Michigan legislature came along and snatched defeat from the jaws of victory and said, okay, well, you can have tasers with a CPL. Okay, but hold on, the case was about stun guns, and now you're saying we can have tasers with a CPL, but the case is still about stun guns.
And every time I get a client charged with having a stun gun, they offer, I'm ready to go fight it all the way up. But every time I get a client, they offer me such a sweet plea deal that they have to take, they have to look out for themselves and they take it.
What's considered a sweet plea deal?
A fine and that's it.
What's the definition of a stun gun?
It's a handheld device.
Right, that does not shoot.
Doesn't shoot?
That doesn't shoot
Correct.
bombs up. And I was at a gun show 2 weeks ago, and there was a guy at a gun show selling it, and he was trying to convince this couple to buy one. And I got into it with him. I said, "You're asking me to be a felony.
How about the?
You're committing a felony by having this here."
So the question is, what is a stun gun? Here's how Michigan law works. You put everything under the category of electromuscular disruption device. Everything under electromuscular disruption device. The only kinds of those you can have are the kinds that, when you use them, drop the little ID tags in there, and the only kind that does that is the taser brand tasers that shoot the prongs. So if it doesn't do that kind of thing, it's still illegal even if you have a CPL, and again, completely unconstitutional.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a commercial thing that one of the other manufacturers should come back after. You got a question, sir?
Yes.
And then we'll get to Larry next.
This is for any of the three of you. So we're currently seeing legislation getting fast-tracked to the House and Senate to make a whole list of misdemeanors to be prohibited people in Michigan, right?
Correct.
So in light of the SCOTUS case, the Bruin case, as we call it, out of New York, where they're, now we're looking at the Fifth Circuit, where they're having non-violent felons are getting their rights restored. Where do you guys think this is heading on a legal basis?
Well, here's the thing you got to understand about this. Just because a law is passed doesn't mean it's constitutional. However, the problem is we've got to go through the route to declare it unconstitutional. What I'm going to say is going to really confuse you, but I'll try not to. When it's passed, it's deemed constitutional until somebody challenges. The problem is the challenge takes years. So right now, I can pass any bill I want, and until someone comes along and says it's unconstitutional, we got to get it into the right circuit, the right side of the state, the whole 9 yards, and it will take many, many years to overturn something like that. But I can say what you just said, these as-applied challenges are coming out in all these circuits, and I believe what they're trying to do here goes completely against the grain with Bruin.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Larry, my cousin from the UP.
Devices. The BRNA, which is basically question on non-lethal devices. The BRNA is a non-lethal, basically a paintball gun, shooting tear gas or whatever. Is that legal in Michigan? And if you try to buy one, you can't buy the best projectile for it. There's a separate projectile you can buy it.
So you're saying it's like a paintball gun, most likely it falls under a pneumatic gun. Back in 2015, Michigan redefined firearm in Michigan so that pneumatic guns no longer fall under firearm. I don't know if anybody know this, paintball guns, all that kind of stuff, used to be considered firearms in Michigan all the way up till 2015 when somebody finally pointed out that maybe we shouldn't consider these firearms, that whole felony for concealing a paintball gun thing, that doesn't really work. You then have to add in, it sounds like some of the capsules have, let's call that like a pepper spray kind of.
Some have tear gas and pepper spray, some have, the ones you can buy in Michigan just have the pepper spray.
Yep, so now you're invoking two laws. So you're invoking all the laws related to pneumatic guns, which there are very few laws that apply to pneumatic guns. As long as you have them, you can have them, you can use them fine. There is preemption for pneumatic guns, so you don't have to worry about local ordinances. But you also now have to go look at pepper spray law. I know Michigan's threshold for acceptable level of the chemical in there used to be lower than other states. I know there was a bill to increase it. I don't know if we ever did increase it, which may be why you said in Michigan you have to buy a lower version.
How about someone on this? Yes, sir.
In the state of Michigan, are you allowed to be in possession of someone else's firearm currently?
Depends. When if you have a what's that?
There you go.
No, you're kind of a firearm?
Yeah. If you have a concealed pistol license, the answer is yes.
You
So
are
like,
allowed to
my
be
wife can be in possession of my firearms, whether they're pistols or rifles, and vice versa.
As long as she has a concealed pistol license.
Well, rifles,
Rifles
doesn't
are
matter.
different.
Yeah.
For now.
For now, no. So there's a lot of confusion on this, and don't be worried about if you're confused on it. So I'm also the legislative director for Michigan Open Carry. I've been working on legislation here for well over a decade. There were so many changes in those background bills in both the House and the Senate. All of us legislative directors got confused about which was which, and it even took us a while to sort it all out once they passed them. The bills that they passed that will take effect sometime next year, like the early next year, they apply to purchasing a long gun. They narrowed it to not necessarily applying to possessing a long gun. So as long as you're not necessarily giving away or selling or purchasing, you're still okay for borrowing, still okay for hunting purposes. How exactly that's interpreted and enforced, we'll see. But it's today, long guns, there's no problem borrowing long guns back and forth. Pistols, have a CPL, then it's okay. Come next spring, you're probably still okay with long guns, but I want you to know there could be some gray area that a creative prosecutor is.
Will we not be okay with pistols come next spring?
Pistols will still be the same. Okay.
We'll get back to some. Anybody, sir? Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is probably going to be a loaded question, but where are we at with that whole pistol brace injunctions? I keep seeing, lawsuits left and right. Where we're coming up on that? What is it going to the Supreme Court? Where are we at?
We've got a split in the circuits right now. Some of the circuits have ruled that the ATF's ban is unconstitutional. There are so many court cases pending right now that are going to have an implication on that. And there's a challenge called to what's called Chevron deference, where administrative agencies can make their own rules. Those are all coming up in the next term of the Supreme Court. So right now, I think we're waiting on the Supreme Court to really chime in.
Okay, and would that, in your opinion, would that take down the entire NFA and just be like, hey, it doesn't matter if it's a pistol brace or not, short-barreled rifles are constitutional?
I have a feeling it's going to be a narrowly tailored ruling.
Gotcha.
It is enforceable right now.
I want to jump in on that. You heard Jim talk about Chevron deference. Chevron is a case from 1984. Basically says that regulatory agencies, when they're interpreting the statutes, there's a law that says, hey, ATF, make some regulations governing firearms. And so when the ATF goes and looks at the statute to say, okay, what is our authority? Chevron deference, it was the United States Supreme Court basically saying, we're going to give deference to the ATF to figure out what their authority is. Everybody see the immediate problem with that?
I wonder what that could.
So in my opinion, Chevron is responsible for one of the biggest expansions in executive power with these executive agencies growing their own power because they say so. Now there is a circuit split on this particular issue of Chevron deference as it applies to criminal matters. Chevron was an EPA case, so it was an environmental issue, civil issue. Should it apply to criminal matters where we know the standard is much higher and there's supposed to be lenity favoring you, the individual, until there's a clear law otherwise? There's a circuit split on that issue. If the United States Supreme Court, which many of the conservative justices have been very critical, basically saying they don't think Chevron deference should apply to criminal matters. If the United States Supreme Court comes out in any one of these cases challenging any of the gun stuff, and says that Chevron deference does not apply to criminal matters, you will see one of the biggest contractions of executive authority probably in our lifetime. Yes. And I know this is a really broad question. What does this have to do with guns? Is because all the junk the ATF has been doing over the past couple of years has been come under their own authority, and every piece of it will suddenly be called into question again. Not just bump stocks, not just their frame definition, all of them over the past couple of years.
It's huge. It's going to be. And I'm feeling pretty positive about it.
Another question. Let's go back here. Yes, sir.
So tonight at midnight is the deadline for the Solicitor General to file a cert petition in Range v. Garland, which is building off of Ed's query on misdemeanors and non-violent felonies would intentionally deal a huge blow to 922G1. So within the next, 8 hours or so, do you think that they're going to take that to the Supreme Court, the Solicitor General?
No, not today.
My understanding there was a bill pending that takes away preemption. If we lose preemption, that scares the hell out of me.
So it's more of a legislative question, but we'll handle it. There has been a bill introduced in Michigan that would reduce preemption, not eliminate it. The proposal would be to allow local units of government to ban assault weapons within 1,000 feet of their government property. Personally, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but you never know, and I can make no promises. Understand that during the legislative process, a lot can change. It can start as one thing, grow into something completely different during the legislative process. But it stands on you to defend preemption.
Yes, sir.
As an election worker, I served in the last election in our local precinct, and I carried. It's legal to do that then. Is it legal to do that now?
Where?
Delta County, Lansing.
Where?
What building?
Building, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, City Hall.
Yeah, I mean, City Hall, unless it's attached to a court or a school, then you should be fine.
So you can carry in a polling place as of right now with the new laws coming in.
I don't know, Tom, on the new law coming in with polling?
There has been a bill introduced to ban guns in polling places. It was referred out of committee. It's sitting in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives have not voted on it yet. I can't tell you that they won't. I can't tell you that they will. I can tell you it's just not in law yet.
So possibly the next election, it might be either way.
Yeah,
we don't know what's gonna happen.
Unless they do it right now, before they adjourn this fall, then coming in 2024, it won't apply in 2024. We'll have to wait until 2025. Right. And so let me give you a bigger answer. The question is, I'm just going to broaden it. Carrying while voting or carrying in election places. As a poll watcher, there's no specific rules applying to poll watchers. So you fall under the general rule of how do you carry while voting or in a polling location. The answer, the poll worker. There's no rules that apply to necessarily the poll worker. So to carry while voting, you just apply the laws that you apply every single day. Is this place one of the places where you have to have a CPL? If yes, have a CPL. Next question is this a place where you can't have a concealed pistol? If yes, openly carry your pistol. But then there's a question, oh, well, Tom, I vote in a school and the school bans guns. That's nice for them, but that doesn't apply to you. They have a dress code too, probably. And the school will force you to follow their dress code and say, I'm sorry, sir, we require school uniforms, and unless you have a school uniform on, we can't allow you in to vote. No, they can't enforce their private policies that way. It has to do with leasing and all that stuff. We won't get into it. So just know, follow the state laws. Even if it's a church or a school, they can't enforce their own policy while voting.
Yes, sir.
That law about the voting places, I thought I read one of them that was going in there that was going to ban it for like 1,000 feet perimeter of any way there's ballots. Well, in Gladstone,
any polling location or drop box, which of course is
a mailbox.
It's extremely problematic. How can you ban all firearms within 1,000 feet of all drop boxes? You wouldn't be able to travel through the city with firearms. We pointed that out to them in committee. They didn't care.
The other problem is we have a gun store in Gladstone. It's across the street from City Hall. They vote in City Hall.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any last couple of questions? Not seeing any. Want to turn it back to
I've got
Skip?
one if nobody else does.
Casey, go
I
ahead.
was wondering if we...
Yours and yours. Go ahead, Casey.
So lately I've been hearing from a lot of young people. One of them even came to one of our recent events up in Gaylord. And they have a lot of questions about how firearms pertain to that 18 to 21 group and how can they, possess or carry and protect themselves in that age group. Can we touch on that subject?
Sure.
Jim, I believe you represented the specific plaintiff.
I did.
Go for it.
Thanks. So, right now, what the law says, Michigan says, I honestly, Casey, I can't remember about what the changes in Michigan law are at this point on this issue. I haven't looked at it for a while. I represented a guy who was trying to buy, 18 years old, trying to buy a firearm at a big box retailer, and we filed suit because it was a violation of his civil rights. I can't tell how that case was settled. I can't really go into how that worked out. But the law wasn't changed, and until it's challenged, we're still in the same place.
Could we touch on at least how does somebody under 21 lawfully open carry?
Well, if it's a handgun, they have to have the handgun registered to them. They have to get a pistol permit registered to them, and then open carry. That's still allowed.
That's the key.
That's the key in Michigan. That's where we're at right now. But they can't buy it they can't get their gun from a federal firearms license dealer because you have to be 21 to buy it from a federal license, federal firearms license dealer. So that's your private transaction.
So between the ages of 18 and 21, so you're under the age of 21, long guns, fine. Pistols, you have to go through a private purchase, and you have to be open carry because you can't get that CPL unless you're in your home, your place of business, or other property you own. If you're an adult, 18 to 20-year-olds can very well own their own property, maybe own their own business. But there's one more thing that I'm starting to experience with 18 to 20-year-olds that come up. Some FFLs, well, under recent federal changes, if an 18 to 20-year-old goes into a gun store to purchase a firearm, their background check can take longer and often does take longer. One of the ways to get around that is the 18 to 20-year-old can go get a license to purchase a pistol from their local police department or any police department. That license to purchase a pistol still qualifies as a NICS waiver, even though the CPL doesn't, at least for right now, that's being litigated. The purchase permit still does qualify for the NICS waiver, so you can skip the NICS background check at the store. Some of the FFLs that we deal with are sending some of their young customers to go do that, and they're running into issues where the local police department says, well, we don't want to give you one because you're not 21 or older. Or they make them jump through extra hoops. If that should happen, know that state law that Jim is very familiar with, called Elliott-Larsen Act, forbids discrimination based on age. If a police department were to do that, were to refuse to give somebody a purchase permit between the ages of 18 and 20, not only does that violate preemption under federal law, in my opinion, that individual will have a civil rights claim getting compensation from that, not just forcing them to follow the law against that local police department.
And if
simply saying the words Elliott-Larsen to that police station should correct the issue.
And if it doesn't, call me.
Yes.
Sir.
1-800-JIM.
So the red flag law or bill was passed by the legislature, it was signed by the governor, it will not go into effect until 90 days from the time that the legislature adjourns this fall. If they adjourn in, let's just call it the end of November, go 90 days out from that, that's when it goes into effect. The red flag bill, I talked to you on the steps about opportunity. The chair of the House Judiciary Committee took these bills under her wing because she's an attorney and she really wanted to work on that. When you're looking at a red flag law across the country, the number one thing you should pay attention to is what is the legal threshold to get one of these orders. There's different legal thresholds. People generally know reasonable, beyond reasonable doubt, right? Let's just call that one you're 95% sure. There's clear and convincing evidence. Say you're 75% sure. There's preponderance of the evidence, 51%. There's even lesser ones, probable cause. The lower your burden of proof to get one of these orders, the more it violates the due process of the subject of the order. So you're seeing states that have a very low threshold. Those are the ones that are being declared unconstitutional for violation of due process. The chair of the House Judiciary Committee wrote this really weird threshold, which includes like 2 maybes. You have to show that by a preponderance of the evidence you might be a threat. The preponderance of the evidence is already a maybe in itself. So you might be a threat to somebody. You compound those 2 maybes and you end up with, in my opinion, the lowest threshold in the entire nation, which probably makes it even easier for us to strike the entire law down, assuming accordingly. But what happens is you can go to any county, get one of these orders, and it would prohibit the person from purchasing or possessing for the time the order is in effect. You guys have any comments?
To add to that very briefly, the problem is truly due process. Again, I have to show that I am not a threat. They don't have to show that I am a threat. It's completely different. You know, it's like asking, you know, your wife accuses you of cheating, and now you've got to prove that you're not. Well, how do you do that? If she says, hey, you're cheating with Mary Sue, you can say, well, Mary Sue and I have never been together. I don't know Mary Sue, blah, blah, blah. But here, if you don't even know what you're accused of, how do you defend that? That becomes the biggest problem.
It's our belief it's highly unconstitutional. Hopefully the courts will agree with us.
And let's say I get an order against you. And let's say maybe there is an issue. And the police are going to come and they're going to take all the firearms in your home. Well, what if you have a significant other or a spouse that also has their own firearms? What about their due process? We pointed all this stuff out in committee.
All right, one last question. Seeing none, want to say thank you all. Yes.
I've got an unrestricted CPL.
You've got a what?
Unrestricted CPL. How come I'm not allowed in my courthouse? How come I'm not allowed in this building?
So the question is, we've got someone who has an exemption, which on their CPL, which basically means you can carry just about everywhere. What I mean by that is in pistol-free zones. The courts are their own jurisdiction. They determine where within their buildings you can and can't carry. So whatever the legislators pass, so be it. The courts may or may not follow that. It's up to them. Go ahead.
And with regard to in here, Dana Nessel wrote an opinion saying the Capitol Commission can ban firearms. And they've enacted their own rules, which are ridiculous.
So in doing that analysis, you have to apply any law that would apply. Take a courthouse, for example. You're not in violation of state statute. State statute says you're exempt. Go ahead. However, the courts have their own separate authority under separation of powers doctrine to control their own facilities. They enforce those powers, their rules under contempt, criminal and civil contempt. And so you wouldn't necessarily be charged with a violation of state law. You'd be charged with contempt of court. In here, same thing. The state statutes, you're not really in violation of state statutes, but according to Dana, the authority here that's supposedly in control can do it the heck they want. Good. So that would be enforced under trespass, not any of the firearms.
And there are a couple courthouses where they will let you carry, but nowhere around here.
All right, thank you all. I think there's one question. I'm going to have to go. I've got a hard stop, and I'm going to leave it up to these gentlemen. And it's always a pleasure being here. And I will see you next year. I'm turning it back to you guys.
Great job, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can take your umbrella.
Yeah, you see my umbrella, so I'm done too. Guys, thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Yeah, I might
I have to go look at the law again. That's probably right. Firearms at hand.
There's two of them.
I got
Well, what they did is in that bill that only is on the Democrats strike out that provision. They said and we go to that. I said, have you read this freaking list? It says anywhere licensed. Anywhere licensed. Actually, I am under licensed. You can't say, yeah, I have that property share. Anywhere. And every Democrat no. They don't know the reason. They are. The reason I wondered is because that's what I don't like that. The police officer would be exempt. Yeah, every November with a whole bunch of hunters stop at fire. Again, it doesn't even matter if they have, let's say they no stock on the truck. A single bottle of liquor. I'm always bad. So like 1/7 doesn't matter. The tax percentage that specific law everyone license. Zero. However, it's not a big process. So while I do that stuff now, there are things that are far higher. I'm just curious. Like one of the I was in the bar. Yeah. You're right. Trying to expand rights. Your thing, I thought you were saying 5 years. So we both go to good luck church.